One. Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lamont Weber, and we're very privileged today to have Dr. Katherine Horton coming to us. Welcome, Katherine. Great. Thank you. Yeah. And Katherine and I have been talking back and forth on the 5G rollout, and there are multiple perspectives that one can look at the 5G rollout. There's the perspective of the tech consumer. Oh, it's going to be great to game, right? There's the perspective of the industry. Oh my gosh, this is the $1 trillion, bonanza. There's the perspective of the People's Republic of China versus the USA Corp. Oh, we're having a 5G geo-social consumer battle of ideologies and spycraft. That's another perspective. And so this is the perspective that we're going to explore here today, a different one. And it's 5G as a mass DEW directed energy weapons health, EMF, neuroweapons targeting and terraforming platform for the transhumanist agenda to robotize humanity. And included in that is ultimately the party doing the terraforming is an invading sentient PPAI, predatory pathogenic artificial intelligence, that is an actor in the exopolitical framework along with many, many other actors. And it seems like it's set up the preconditions for this terraforming. For example, in the United States, the 1996 Telecommunications Act prohibits considering health and safety in approving cell phone systems. And 5G, even going from 4G to 5G, is an exponential escalation in the amount and quantity and quality of EMF and RF exposure. So it goes to a military grade weapon that is being now targeted on a city, on a footprint population, and on individual humans. So Dr. Katherine Horton, former Oxford Fellow and extraordinary intellect, as well as a targeted individual who has really dedicated, and as well as a leader in many interesting and leading edge projects, such as her affidavit project, which she will describe, I'm sure. Over to you on this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. I think I would like to start with this because even though we discussed it before the show, what we're going to talk about, when you summarized it with the sentient AI, even though I worked on computer systems and algorithms and things like that, I was overwhelmed just listening to you. And I worked in particle physics. I worked at CERN. I'm not an expert on the modern systems they have these days, but I've been around the block a couple of times. And when you put it like that, which is all true in my view, I just didn't even, I thought, oh my God, that's what we're talking about today. So I think the average person struggles so much understanding what all this is about. And that's what they're banking on. So they are banking on the fact that, for example, there's a very simple con hidden in this marketing ploy that is 5G. For example, when they brought out 3G and 4G, everybody assumes that 5G is just a better 3 and 4G. So what's all this fuss about? Is it just Luddites who are just, they are scared and they are tree huggers and they just don't really enjoy watching happy kitten videos super fast on their phone? But that's not what it is. So 5G is a fundamentally different system. And as you were just summarizing it, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed because, the full sheer weight of the topic just hit me. I think what I would like to do is to take all the people who are maybe even more overwhelmed than I am, I want to pick them up where they're at maybe, and then bring them up to speed and tell them everything I know. So by the end of the show, they at least know what I think and what I know, so that they can make up their own mind what they think. And there's several discoveries I had trying to research the subject. And I should say that my main focus is not even 5G or 5G campaigning. My main focus is campaigning to have all the directed energy weapon systems shut down, which includes also satellite weaponry, weaponry hidden in cars, weapons carried by gang stalkers in rucksacks, and all this sort of stuff. And out of all that, 5G is, if you like, the state system. It encapsulates everything. It can do a bit of everything, and it will be everywhere. So your 5G system is like a gang stalker with a directed energy weapon in his rucksack who shoots you in the face as you're walking behind him, on the pavement, for example. But it will not be a gang stalker. They can do away with those if they just have these 5G antennas every 50 or 100 meters. So the 5G system will do everything that the current global weapon system can do. And it can also, I strongly believe, it can also instantly kill. Okay. So in other words, if you want to cut to the chase, my view of the 5G system, and I'll show you why I think that's the case, the 5G system should be best imagined as the government, or this shadowy group that has infested the government, taking over every city on the planet and every village and even the smallest town and even the forest where you think there's nothing, and putting up hidden machine guns that follow you and your family, pointing right at you, and these are set sharp so that they can shoot you dead at the speed of light if somebody so wishes. Okay, so that is the best description of the 5G system that I have. So imagine, should you be worried if you suddenly saw, your government putting up AK-47s on every rooftop, and as you're walking, as you're driving your children to school, and as you're, walking, down the mall with them, you suddenly notice that these weapons start following you. They start turning their heads and they start following you. Would you feel comfortable, or would you think the government has gone utterly mad, right? And that's what you should think. The problem is that it's a cognitive problem. We humans have been through the television films and the movies and maybe war zone experience, because millions of people sadly have them. We have been trained on ballistic weapons, and they are hopelessly outdated. So pretty much throughout the 20th century, we just didn't notice the really big weapons were all electromagnetic weapons. They are much better than nuclear weapons because you can exterminate entire cities and you don't contaminate the environment. So in other words, you can take over the city straight away. You just remove the corpses and you carry on where the other people left off. So this is why electromagnetic weapons are the worst weapons of mass destruction we ever had. But they are also the most secretive, precisely because they're so powerful. They come in big versions, so that you can shoot out a plane out of a missile out of the sky. They come in handheld versions. They can be hidden in buildings. They can be hidden at your neighbors. They can be hidden anywhere around the street. So they are a booming industry that is now going to quintuple. So it's going to increase by 500% over the next 6 years roughly. And it is such a booming industry because it is so powerful and it can be used for so many nefarious means at zero cost. If you fire, an AK-47, what that will do is it will leave bullet holes. It will leave, forensic trails leading straight back to you. And, it's pretty hard to find a silencer for those things. So people will hear who's fired the shots. When you fire a directed energy weapon, it's perfectly silent. It's lethal. It's immediate reload. So you have a machine gun that's even faster than the normal machine guns, mechanical machine guns we have. Okay, so that is directed energy weapons. Now, the 5G system is a directed energy weapon system. So in other words, what the governments are pulling up are weapons of mass destruction in the civilian domain. And, governments always had weapons of mass destruction. They always have their tanks of bio warfare and chemical warfare. They've got their nukes, but typically they're not, kept around the mall. at least not as far as we know. Maybe there's an underground bunker behind, you know, a Walmart or shopping mall. But these weapons, they will be out in the public. They will be pulsing nonstop, and it will be just either a glitch or just somebody's, you know, volition that will set them from the fairly harmless and survivable shot to the deadly shot. Okay, so that's what people have to realize. This is what I'm talking about. Now, I just put it out there, and most people think, oh gosh, she's crazy. I mean, you know, who the hell would do something like that? And I want to pick people up where they're at. So first of all, I want to show what the 5G system really looks like in practice. Then I want to show, you know, how the industry is actually gloating with it. They know that this is a weapon. They're gloating. They're jeering at us, and they're making fun of us. And then I will show you what this weapon is planned to be used for and is already being used for right now. So what I'm talking about is not just, oh, it's 5 years in the future. No, this system is killing people right now. And now the only question is the time lag between us realizing, accumulating a critical mass and shutting the system down, and arresting the criminals, whoever, you know, thought of putting this in the domain, knowing full well. Now that time delay pretty much maps out how many people are going to die. Okay, and this crime cartel that, you know, I'm already jumping ahead, but I'll just tell you, in my view, there's a big organized global crime cartel. They know what they're doing, and their goal is to kill as many people as they possibly can. And that is because they realize that with the population growing and the internet coming in, they cannot hold the same type of control on humanity. It is mathematically impossible to hold the same type of control on humanity that they used to have, you know, back in the 1980s, even the 1990s. And the control they had up until the 1990s was pretty much the control they had going back to biblical times and Babylonian times and before. So we have to understand that we're dealing with an organized crime cartel that is so completely out of its depth, even though it doesn't know it is. They think they're winning, but they're going to hit the wall very hard. And in the non-linear process of realization, they're going to go, you know, they're going to run amok. So we now have this weapon system. The plan is to use the time delay between us cottoning on, organizing ourselves, reaching critical mass, and shutting this down to kill as many people as they possibly can. That's right now, as I see it, that is the name of their game. Okay, so this is why informing yourself is so important. But what I say today shouldn't just stay with the listeners. It has to go on social media. It has to go to your relatives. It has to go to your friends. Don't be embarrassed of alerting people to this, because this is an actively shooting weapon system that is being deployed everywhere around the world. So what you do if you start activating your social networks is, because we are all connected through 3.5 degrees of separation, thanks to Facebook and, you know, social media, what you're doing is you are quickly informing a very large number of people, and you are shortening non-linearly the time it takes to inform the planet. So if everybody informs people, we really use the network mathematics, so the networks we have, and these networks are the reason the crime cartel is losing. That's what they're afraid of. But we need to use our power. If we just, you know, use the internet to send each other jokes and, you know, PowerPoint presentations with jokes in, we're not going to save our lives. So we have to use the networks we have in the internet to get, you know, life-saving information to each other. That's what's so important. And what we do by doing that is we are literally shortening this time. But when things go viral, something that would have taken maybe 20 years before to inform the entire planet can take as short as a week, you know. And there are several CIA tests that actually show that. I think one CIA test, I believe it was a CIA test, is, for example, the ice bucket water challenge. Okay, at first a couple of people did this challenge of pouring a bucket of ice water over themselves, and then you blink, and next thing you know is, you know, Donald Trump does it. So, you know, and all your friends, because they think it's hilarious. Now, that is something, a meme going viral, okay? And with that, I think the CIA is measuring how quickly we can really, you know, get information across, and they are putting, blocks in everywhere, and they are learning or trying to learn how can they contain what we know, and how can they cut us off, and all this to delay the time delay our time so that the cartel can continue killing. I think this is what all the YouTube shutdowns are about, all the Twitter shutdowns and suspensions, all the Facebook suspensions. They know they can't win. That's a given. They are playing on time, and they are hoping that we will die before we win. That's basically their last attempt. Okay, so now 5G comes into this big killing plan the following way. Number one, as I said, 3 and 4G are fundamentally different. Okay, so 3 and 4G, imagine you have, so a little, antenna, and then it's radiating out. So like the old drawings of a radio antenna always had an emitter and then kind of concentric in 2D on the page, concentric circles. In 3D, those are spheres. So the radiation goes out spherically from the antenna and reaches everywhere. But because it goes out spherically, the intensity that hits you or your mobile phone reception drops off with the square of the distance. So it's an inverse square law. And the inverse square aspect of it comes purely from the fact that the surface of the sphere increases by the square of the radius. If you remember your school maths of how the surface of a sphere relates to its radius, it's the square of the radius. So as the radiation goes out, it has to kind of fill a bigger and bigger, surface effectively. So the intensity drops off, as it spreads out over the whole ever, increasing size of the sphere. Now that inverse square law stops applying as soon as you collimate this thing and you are firing pulses, very collimated and kind of, people use the word focused. Focused means it's, focused on a point. Collimated means it's parallel. So it's kind of like, the beam shape stays over long distances, and it's just it's a little, kind of like a laser beam is collimated. Okay, a very good laser beam stays the same width over a kilometer. So when you do that, you don't spread out the energy over a sphere anymore, and then the intensity is pretty much, well, there's some losses with scatter in the air, but they are minimal in certain frequencies. And this means the intensity stays pretty much the same at large distances. In other words, you can be shot in the face across town or across, a street with the same intensity as if you stood next to the antenna system. Okay, it's just the same intensity at every distance. Now there you can already tell that, hang on, suddenly distance from the source stops being protection. And we already know this sort of effect when, for example, people point a laser pointer at your eye. You can be standing across the classroom or across the street. If it's a dangerous laser and they point it in your eye, they damage your eye, and it doesn't matter how distant you are. And this is what, some people use to startle pilots or just try how powerful their laser pointer is by taking a green, very powerful laser and pointing it on an airplane. And I'm not encouraging anybody to do it because it's deadly, and the police will get you because they can find you thanks to surveillance. But when you do that, if you did that, which you shouldn't, you would notice that this beam really does hit the plane. It's a bit bigger, quite a bit bigger than how it started because your torch isn't perfect, but it's still collimated and it can still cause eye damage to the pilot all the way up there because the laser has pretty much preserved its power. It's kind of spread over a larger area a bit because the beam isn't perfectly parallel or collimated. It's a bit fans out. So with a very large distance, the power spreads over a larger area, but you can still damage the eyes of the pilot. That's why you should never ever point a green laser up into the sky. Okay, it is a terrorist act to do that. But imagine now when people put up invisible microwave towers where the power of your microwave is pointed at you and you can't even run away. Even if you run a mile, you would still be shot in the head with the same power. Okay, give or take, some losses on the way, but they are surprisingly low. Now that is the system. That's what you have to understand. 5G is this collimated system, And it's more than that, it's pulses. And pulses are always worse than just a continuous beam, because in the pulse itself, there's such a mix of frequencies. They hit basically a lot of resonant frequencies, can cause a lot of heating, a lot of damage. So a pulse is always deadlier than a continuous beam of one set frequency. Okay, so this is what it is. And now I've just said this to you, and you probably wonder, okay, how the hell does she know, and does she have any evidence? I would like to share my screen and show people. Alfred, am I too confusing about this? Because I know I've got a habit of turning into a physics lecture. Can people follow, you think?
Well, I find it very clear and with a very logical sequence. So I'm following you, and I think that our listeners and our viewers will be following you. That's
because
my own
I'm a bit
assessment.
afraid, because I used to research physics, so when I'm on a roll, I'm just I gallop along like a horse.
As they say, go for it.
Go for it. So let me share my screen, and let me point you to a document I found extremely helpful. And it's this document here. I hope you guys can see my website. So I don't want to push my website, but on here, on stop007.org, you'll find a research library that I hope you will find useful. If you scroll down to the bookshelf here, you will find an index, and somewhere here there's Genocide and Assault Methods 5G. So please click on 5G, and you will immediately be taken to a document that was a presentation by experts from Rohde and Schartz. By the way, there's an R missing. So Rohde and Schartz is a German weapons company. Okay, now that should already make you listen up. And there's also a very good presentation by Dr. Barry Trow, who's really the field expert in this. Absolutely, I'm just a particle physicist. He's actually a microwave weapons expert. So Dr. Barry Trow trumps me any day, okay? But filling in for him now, this is the best I know from this technical document here. If you click on this Rohde and Schartz document, this was a technical presentation. So with everything that's technical, don't get scared. Just flick through it and look at the images first. That's what physicists do as well, just to get a rough idea. So now I'm just going to scroll down very fast. You know where to find it. And the first thing that should startle you is the rollout, okay? Now, the rollout that they have here, 5G standardization, which means they already have 5G, but they are now fine-tuning it and making it very generic. So there's, they're already up to release number 13, okay, in 2015. And we are now here in 2019, which is at the end of this scale, okay? And that's the Tokyo 2020 Olympics here. So by that time, I think they want us under full control, crowd control, right? The other thing I would like to point out, which is maybe for people who don't do the sort of criminal investigations I, spend my time on, when you know this crime cartel, the first thing you should immediately pick up on are these pentagrams. It's satanic pentagrams everywhere. Most people think these are just harmless stars. They are really not. There's so many different ways to draw a star, and when we're dealing with these people, it's always a pentagram. So they know exactly what they're doing, okay? And this pentagram is turning from blue, which is the military color, right, of the crime cartel. That's why we have the blue helmets for NATO, and NATO's color is blue. But as you can see, it's turning purple, which is an Illuminati color. So you're going up, in the performance, and then it turns blood red. So, you get the idea. But anyway, that's just as an aside. Here they are talking about the deployment, and there's a lot of information in that, but I want to kind of flash it up so that you get a rough idea of what's in this documentation. And here's, for example, an antenna, and then they're talking about how you can pinpoint people and how you can send a cone their way. And already this little diagram, if you just zoom in and know what to look for, you will see these lobes. Okay, and these lobes are these collimated pulses, okay? And as you can tell, these lobes are pointing right at the mobile phone and at this person's head, okay? So that already gives you a rough idea what we're dealing with. But now I'm just gonna scroll down to show you one a few more diagrams in this. So they're talking about the beam shape and the deployment here, this one here. Okay, so now here they're talking about beam forming. Okay, now beam forming is very important because it is through beam forming that you go from these concentric circles here that you would have, you know, with the classical system, to collimated pulses, which is what they have here. And as it's shown here, the collimated pulses are very focused. They are almost focused onto the size of the mobile phone. Okay, so we are talking about very, very sharp and focused pulses. Now, how big these pulses really are depends on the exact, method used and so on. But okay, sorry, this is annoying when I'm going this fast, but I'm searching for another image that is even better. But here you will get all the specifications of the system. Okay, and I'm looking for an image that really brings it home, that's further down. So it's very technical, blah, 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 somewhere here. Yes, this one. So that, ladies and gentlemen, here is the logo of 5G, okay? Now the logo of 5G is this drawing. You've got the 5G here, you've got this tower, you've got the classical, you know, kind of almost spherical, emissions here. But then it switches to these blue beams, right, that are drawn blue here. They're not necessarily blue in real life, but these lobes are what they will shoot you with, okay? They will pulse these things at you, your head, and your mobile device, and they will triangulate you and find you and focus the intensity trying to hit your device, but then on the way they will hit everything else in between, right? Birds, you know, whatever else, beetles, or people in the street, you know? So that is what we're dealing with. And also note that it's not just this beam, it has fairly strong side lobes. In other words, when you're creating these beams, you have well, this looks like an interference peak to me. Okay, they call them phased arrays. So they make a big interference pattern, and then you use the main lobe, but you've got these side lobes that still can be significant. So it could be that one person is talking on the phone over here, where this little triangle is, and then he gets perfect reception, but while he's talking on the phone, everybody else's head gets hit with these side lobes, okay? And that could be quite significant, the amount of radiation that you get. And again, note that distance from the source will not save you. You can run, but you can't hide in this system. In other words, if your friend is talking on the phone and you realize, hang on, maybe I'm being hit by one of these lobes, if you run away, it could be that you still continue to be hit by these lobes, okay? Just with the same intensity, pretty much. So it is the fact that we're dealing with pulses that don't really drop off that much, and then it's combined with the sheer density of these antennas. So in other words, when the 5G system is deployed, it is physically impossible to go downtown without being machine gunned by pulses. And that is what's so bad about it, okay? So this is, I'm trying to stick to the drawings to show you. I'm just gonna see if I missed out something further down. Hang on, my PDF is stalling, but I think this is the most, I'm just gonna go through it very fast to see if there's an image that I missed. Yes, here you have it again, okay? So these are these pulses that will be emitted, okay? And here you can see this emitter system, and it's many, many, many little antennas combining to generate these pulses. And then they say they will use beam sweeping, a beam sweeping procedure for power efficiency and cell detection. In other words, think about it like they're going to machine gun the entire, street to find your mobile phone, right? I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. So there's a lot of high intensity pulses being shot, through the landscape, and people will be helpless to protect themselves from it. Even if you don't carry a mobile phone, you will be hit by the beam sweeping, you will be hit by the side lobes when somebody else is talking on the phone, and your head, and most importantly, your children's head, who have even smaller skulls, right, and are therefore even more affected by this, they will be machine gunned with pulses. And then, as I said, the intensity of these things can be non-lethal, or if they crank it up, it can be really bad. So that's the first thing you need to know. The second thing you need to know, and this is where the gloating comes in, okay? When you look for adverts for a system that is like that, there's somebody who sent me this, the Radwin 5000 jet beam forming technology. You will recognize the word beam forming. And I just would like to play this little clip. And I just ask you if you notice anything creepy about this little video. So I hope, hang on, I hope it's loud enough. I'm just going to set it to maximum. Okay, so I hope you can hear it. If not, you can always play the video. Oh, sorry. Let's start from the front. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, so now my question to the viewers was, I'm sorry, I labeled people's patience by playing the full 3 minutes, but
yeah, could I ask you something? We could not hear the soundtrack. Was there any? Were there any? Was there a narrative going on?
Yes, there was. Okay, in that case, good job you told me. Forgive me, because then this movie was really dull. I really encourage people. I'll post the, maybe Alfred can post the link later, because you have to listen to what they are saying, and also carefully listen to the jingle. Okay, because this is essentially the advert for genocide. Okay, this is the advert for your death, but they have covered it very, very, very well. And if you really want to understand, I will just go through the tricks that they have played on us very quickly so that you are mentally inoculated. But then I encourage everybody to listen to it and also see the brainwash, the mind control script run, because it's also running with the music. So the first, brainwash script they play on us is to say, but we asked for it, okay? Look, all these people outside protesting, increase my capacity, connect me, need for speed, need for speed. Have you guys ever seen a protest for need of speed? I have never, ever seen anybody protest for more capacity, ever. And of course, there are people coming online, but, within reason. We don't have to have this exponential stuff. So the first brainwash is here, look, it's not really them imposing it on us. It's all these customers asking, please upgrade. I want higher capacity. That's nonsense. It's the carriers who want higher capacity for a lot of nefarious stuff that they are doing. Okay, that's what they don't tell you. You remember the CIA, the head of the CIA saying that your fridge will spy on you? Well, for that they need 5G, right? Now that's what this is about. Now the second brainwash script here, if they show you what your radiation field with the 3 and 4G antennas used to look like, and then they show you how they are switching over to the new model, but in between they go over the 5 gigahertz license here, and most people don't notice this, but the 5G is not the 5 gigahertz band. It's a much higher band, okay? And what they're telling you here is, look, the 5G license exempt band has so much interference from third-party systems. Who are the third-party systems? Because it's only the telecommunication services broadcasting, right? So the third-party systems are a shadowy group who are already using the 5 gigahertz band. And look at this, it's the license exempt band. So what that means, it is the Wild Wild West band. Anybody can do anything unlicensed and the government will not ask questions. So what the hell do you think that band is being used for, right? And these guys say, look, there's so much interference everywhere, which means that there's so many black ops running everywhere in this license exempt band, that we need to go to another band. And as soon as they introduce their little antenna and say how great it is, the beam focuses down. And then when you look carefully, you can't see mobile phones here. You see people with laptops. But then these beams start happily shooting people, pulsing them. And that's exactly the moment where this very, very happy melody starts up that immediately gives you a feel-good feeling. Just play this advert over and over and see the moment when you get, I don't know, a rush of endorphins or whatever you get, right? A very happy hormones. And that's exactly when the melody starts up. And it's perfectly tuned to cover up so that you get the endorphins when they start shooting people. In other words, your brain is switched off. If you just watched it without the sound, maybe you were already freaked out seeing these people being, zapped. But when the jingle is on, most people miss the zapping. Okay, so it's better that you didn't hear it. So that is the point when they are, actually just jeering at us. And you can see that what they previously called the 5G band still continues. So they are saying there will be zapping with this technology and zapping with those third-party black undisclosed, projects that are already hogging the band. Okay, so this is what your city will look like. You will not have these overlapping 3 and 4G bands where all your neighbors got the same intensity. They will zap individuals, and when you do that, you can pick what intensity every person gets. You can tailor it to their customers, in inverted commas, or their targets, their target group. Okay, that is the key. In other words, with the 5G technology, your neighbors will not get the same radiation as you do. If you're dissident, if you think that Hillary Clinton is a criminal, well, you will be just zapped with more energy and you will be helpless. Your neighbors will survive, you will die. That's it. And it's all possible with this technology because they can target you and they can tune the intensity for every pulse to be what you get according to your secret social score. Okay, that's what you need to know. So there's a lot more creepy stuff in this video, but for those people who don't believe me that yes, there is a real life genocide out there, I just would like to point you to the genocide plans that a researcher called sorry, I just pressed it by accident. That the researcher called Ryan Zimmerman published. I think it was on medium.com. And the reference to his work is also on my website here. If you just go back to the genocide, hang on, you will find the genocide plans here. Proof of global genocide. This was the research library, the bookshelf I pointed you to. Okay, this research library. If you scroll down to this presentation, you will get a link to his work so that you can get it from the person who actually uncovered this. It wasn't me. It's Steemit. Sorry, not Medium, Steemit. So it was on Steemit. So all credit goes to this person who really did humanity a huge service. He also is quoting a WikiLeaks document, and please read this because it's very, very, very important. But the site that he uncovered is deagle.com, okay? And as you can see on the front page, this is a company that is monitoring serious weapon sales. And with serious weapons, I mean all this big stuff. It's tanks, but it's also aircraft carriers. You know, it's, you know, very, very modern weapons as well. I think here in the beginning, they're talking about, you know, all sorts of planes, you know, but also aircraft carriers and military ships, tanks, everything, the lot. Okay, so this is a private intelligence agency, and you can find on this private intelligence agency the genocide plans for every country. So, for example, if you are in the United States, what you do is you type United States into the search, press enter, but then don't be confused by the "we're sorry, no match is found," because that is a trick. It is to divert the unattentive. Okay, they will lose 90% of the people with just this one trick alone. You have to notice that you're on the equipment tab. You have to go to the country tab, and then you will find the United States. So do that, and then you can see how the United States is stated here to have had, in 2017, 327 million people up here. And then in the forecast, 2025, the population of the United States is set to be only 100 million, this number down here. So they are expecting that over the next 6 years, the population is going to drop by over 2/3, from 327 million to 100 million. In other words, Deagle.com, this private intelligence agency, it's not a joke. It's not a joke at all, right? They expect 2 in 3 people to die over the next 6 years. And you can do the same thing if you say, okay, that's the, you know, US, we're far away, let's try Germany. You can go into the country tab, Germany. In 2017, it had 81 million people here. And then in 2025, it's predicted to have 28 million people, okay? Over 50%, right? What? They're just going to drop dead? They're not going to drop dead by themselves. That means they are to be murdered, okay? They are to be murdered. And I strongly believe that this 5G weapon system will allow them to do that, because they can target, they can identify you walking down the street, and they can blast you and zap you all day long as you're outdoors. Even when you're indoors, you might be defenseless depending on what frequency they use, and they will just gun you until you die. And you will just notice that you suddenly have cancer, your health will disintegrate, you'll feel very poorly, and then you will pass, and then all your neighbors who are in the cartel will get stonkingly rich. Okay, so that is what we're looking at now, and this is why 5G has to be recognized as a weapon of mass destruction. And this is, I think, what Alfred meant with terraforming, because that is definitely a way you can form entire neighborhoods. You zap out the people you don't like, So you don't like this person who is over there because he's really clued in and the truther. You don't like this person over there because, I don't know, you want his house. He's got a really big property, so you want him dead so that you can get the property on the cheap from his widow. And then you don't like this guy because he's an entrepreneur and you want his factory. So you just zap them all out, okay? And that is what this 5G technology allows. Now, under this light, with these published genocide plans, and I also would like to point out, if you doubt the information that Deagle has, go on to orders, for example, and then for every country, you can see how they are listing, many, many pages back, the precise number of missiles shipped from Germany, you know, to Algeria and stuff like that. So you can see that they are monitoring weapon sales. They're tracking every freaking tank. Okay, they know what they're talking about. So under the slide, under the published genocide plans, okay, under this 5G technology, it should be the more worrying that we suddenly have, we suddenly have over here Donald Trump saying, I want 5G and even 6G. I mean, whatever the hell 6G is. I don't even know what they mean on the 6G. So I want 5G and even 6G technology in the United States as soon as possible. In other words, Donald Trump says, I want to get onto the genocide plan of murdering 2/3 of Americans as fast as I possibly can. And he even says it to you. It is far more powerful, faster, and smarter, and smart means AI enabled, than the current standard. That's exactly right. It is much more powerful, it is much more deadly, it is much faster in finding you and tracking you and triangulating you, and it is AI enabled, okay? And he says, he's not talking about American public, he says American companies must step up their efforts or get left behind. Now, when you read between the lines and when you know that Donald Trump is actually a Mason, you know what he means by left behind, as in if you don't get on board, you will be genocided. And he says there's no reason that we should be lagging behind on, and then he puts in China. And remember, China already introduced the social score. So in other words, the social score will determine who gets zapped to death and who will survive. Okay, so that's what 5G is about. Now, I hope I stopped sharing my screen. So what people need to understand, I hope I showed you that it's nothing like 3 and 4G. 3 and 4G, they irradiated entire neighborhoods. If they cranked up the power and suddenly everybody got cancer, that really showed in the statistics. With the new one, they can kill individuals, literally snipe them out, and you would not be the wiser. It is a silent system. It shoots at the speed of light. Depending on the frequency they use, you can't even hide behind a wall because they can literally pulse through walls. They can pulse, well, depending on the technology they use, also through sheet metal, as I discovered. And it is very painful. When they crank it up, it is so-called pulsed energy projectiles. And they can, we found, several of my clients observed this and myself, that they can dent steel with this. It literally looks like little, not quite holes, but bullet dents in sheet metal. They can certainly shoot you, and your nervous system gets a flash. I get machine gunned like that every single night and every single day. And it is absolutely devastating. I can feel the physical damage, you know. On some days I've got difficulty walking because of this. So that is a system that I know to be already deployed against me. And now 5G means it can be deployed to anybody. So unless we stop 5G, our world will look nothing like what it looked like even 2 years ago. And you're right, Alfred, it is sentient AI. Yes, this AI system is utterly out of control, and it is programmed to kill. That's the truth.
Right, and so what we found in our this is just a comment. We had a period of studying the AI, and people can go to our website exopolitics.com, and there's a collection of the the articles there. Along the side, there's a link. And we had various panels, and the AI seems to have targeted sponsors and hosts, and it went after the elites. The monarchies are sponsors and hosts. Companies like Google and all of the big tech companies appear to be sponsors and hosts of the AI, even though with their consumer advertising and their corporate persona, they project themselves in a consumer point of view, even though they sort of, Google's first motto, corporate motto, "Don't be evil," I think was like the AI in your face pointing through. I mean, who has a corporate motto, "Don't be evil," except Dr. Evil?
Well, I think we figured out what that means. They meant, don't you be evil, leave the being evil to us. I think that's what they mean, don't you be evil, because they are facing outward, right? They're not talking to themselves. They're talking to you like, don't be evil or we'll kill you.
Oh, I see. Oh, so it's all a projection. Yeah. And so the esse is how we awakening humans facing this infrastructure where the big tech, where the governments are either from a consciously sponsors and hosts. For example, in the UK, Prince Charles was the head of the Royal Commission on Artificial Intelligence that concluded that artificial intelligence was not a problem. And so he's a prime suspect. He is a prime sponsor and host of the Terraforming AI. And recently, so everything that he does is disinformation on behalf of the AI. So the question that we have as civil society of humans, as opposed to AI and trained humanoids, I think that would be the distinction there. Is what is our strategy if in the US, for example, they have a jurisdiction that at the federal level, the 1996 Telecommunications Act prohibits you from taking health and safety into consideration in approving new telecommunications and cell phone systems. So typically with human ingenuity, we're just sort of doing, patchwork strategies. And in Australia, one strategy is to go to the medical area and come in with medical opinions that EMF is doing one medical harm, and then coming in with those medical opinions to the city councils, so that then the city councils can pass laws based on those local medical opinions, using lawyers and other representatives who are woke or who are awake to the fact that we have an AI infestation and an AI invasion on the planet. They have the AI and the sponsors and hosts have released movies like The Blob. All of these movies are sort of filled filled the meme space so that humans are conditioned to the basic circumstance, but really, and are sort of so that they're conditioned not to take action against it and to get into sort of be basically immobilized or to welcome and to surrender themselves to the transhumanist agenda.
You are absolutely right, Alfred. Everything you said is exactly, I think, as it's happening. That's what I saw as well. Starting with the royal families, and also Trump is a billionaire. Actually, the royal families and the billionaires are in the same camp, and I'll explain why. Because what they must remember, both camps, both the royal families and the billionaires, is that this is the organizational structure of this crime cartel, okay? And what many people forget, because they focus on the all-seeing eye and they think they are in the crowd, is that there's always a gap. Okay, there's a safety gap between the top and here. And what they also don't see is that throughout the centuries, there's a churn. Okay, the system always stays like this, but individuals and individual families, unless they're the very top, they kind of cycle. Okay. And already the Romanovs show that even if you are royal, you can be cycled, you can be killed off. Now, where the royal families are right now and the billionaires, they're in this gap. Okay? Now, they think they're going to go up, but I'm telling you, this system works always such that it gets fresh blood up, simply because the new people, the fresh people, are so much more pleased to be there, to have made this jump. They've got much higher loyalty, whereas people who have a house right, like the European royal families, they are on the way out. They have to be, because what is coming down the pipe will be so horrific that, unless you have this totally brainwashed, a new, like nouveau riche sort of obsession, you will not want to go along with it. I think if Prince Charles still hasn't woken up, a clue to that might be from investigators who said that I'm sorry to bring it up, right? But the people in the US said that the reason why Comey was fired is because they uncovered a video where he's not just seen raping children to the theme of Howdy Doody, this little puppet, where the children have to be dressed up like, Howdy Doody, but there's also video footage where he is raping Prince Charles. Now, for anybody who's like, oh my God, we had 5G, we had genocide, now this. Now, unless you understand how this cartel works, you think, oh my God, that's crazy. But this at the very top is a death and sex cult. It has always been, it always is, and at the very top, they're all doing it with each other. They have to, for the control files, and to create a psychopathic bond between each other. But that also means that anybody who ends up in that system gets the full dose of monarch programming. And it's called monarch programming for a reason, right? As one, woman pointed it out to me, it's because first and foremost, it was designed to turn the offspring of psychopathic things like pharaohs and kings and leaders equally psychopathic so that they can survive in this psychopath environment. Okay, so in other words, Prince Charles is one of the most mind-controlled people on the planet. And if, heads of MI6 find it hard to snap out of their programming, their mind control programming, well, good luck to Prince Charles. So I think he will be one of the last to be allowed to wake up. Okay, and it's for a reason, because he and his family are to be culled. That's why. And actually, I put out this information back in 2017. When you read the cartel and cartel signaling, which I know even senior investigators, kind of think like, oh God, that's like girly stuff, it's like not real. They don't realize that the cartel is dead serious. They are messing around and they're mucking about, but they are putting out the most deadly serious stuff in the most frivolous things. It's, the opposite, whereas you will never hear it on CNN, but you might find hard truths in a rom-com or comedy, stuff where people would never think that this is now serious, okay? But it was the Ascot, the Royal Ascot horse racing adverts that pretty clearly stated to anybody who knows Masonic signaling and has a brain that yes, the Masons' next plan, which was 300 years in the making, is to asset strip and to snipe out the English royal family. Okay? It is right there. It's all in the sequence. There's one of the Technocrime Fighters 4, I analyzed it, and I don't really want to get into that. We can put the link maybe if people are interested, but it's like this. You have to think, if you can't believe why they would kill the billionaires and the royal families, or at least would want to, think like this. The entire system of how the cartel has developed was always one of expansion, getting people into the franchise. So the new entries are promised riches and beautiful women and fast cars, lots of money, and that's how they're bought in. But what that means is that as this cartel is traveling through time, it has to conquer, it has to kill, it has to take stuff. More and more, the bigger it gets. Now it's global, and they are globalists. They are all around the planet. So who's left? They have asset stripped Africa, they've asset stripped Asia and Latin America. Oh, well, it's Europe and the US, the North America, right? We're ripe for plucking now. So what that means is, okay, who in Europe and in the US really owns like the biggest amount of stuff, right? Well, the Queen of England owns like what, a third or 2/3 of the planet, you know? So guess who would be next, right? The same with the Belgian royal family, you know? And they are known to be pretty much batshit crazy and into child sacrifice, I heard, and there's the Mother of Darkness castle near Brussels and so on. Why are they so crazy? Because they are the most mind-effed people on the planet, because they're so high up. They have to prove their worth. They have to prove how psychopathic they are to keep all the other psychopaths at bay. Now, when these people say anything, they will not have the ability to think straight. I mean, military intelligence's job is to make sure that the royal family cannot tell their head from their ankles most of the time, right? That is their main job, and these people are pretty good at their jobs, you know? So I'm not surprised. Now, you asked, what should we do about it? Well, I would not start with trying to wake up Prince Charles, but the further away you are from the top of the pyramid, the freer you are. Okay? In other words, your Auntie Marge is freer than any of the heads of MI6. She can flip on an opinion, you know? So you have to reach out and you have to mobilize those, being fully aware that when all your aunties and uncles start mobilizing, and this happens across just the planet, there is not just an army, but we're not talking about, you know, scruffians and, you know, protesting hippies who are so high on weed they don't even know what they're protesting about. No, we're talking about the bedrock of society. When we wake up those people, there's no going back. We have basically the planet. You know, we need to wake up the working parents. We need to wake up all your aunties and uncles and your gran, and she will probably not be surprised because she's seen a lot throughout her lifetime. And we need to very, very quickly, in this lag we have to figure out how to work together, right? And none of us have ever done that. None of us have lobbying experience. We don't know how the courts are run. We don't know how police needs to be run. We don't even know according to what principles our government should make decisions. And we need to learn that by yesterday. You know, that's basically it. So my job is to go around and rattle cages and wake people up. And when you want to wake people up, it is so crazy what you're telling them. The first thing that they have to know, this is not my craziness. I am boring. I'm the most straight-laced, boring Oxford physics academic that ever existed, right? I can't come up with this crazy stuff. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about what them came up with. Those people in this death and sex cult who had their head, you know, so messed around, you know, that they can't think straight anymore. So it is them who are doing it. It was them who developed all this. It's them who are in charge of these projects. So that's number one. And then number two is you have to realize that even though they can seem all powerful when they're sitting on top of the top of the pyramid, when the pyramid decides to go another way, what's going to happen with the top? It's just going to stay sitting on top, right? So when you listen to just top-down commandos, you're trapped. When you all start moving into another direction, it is physically impossible to stop you. So, for example, if you just get across to your local police chief that the 5G antennas are a mass murder system, and he actually gets it, he will not arrest you if you go around smashing up these things. If you get it across to the people installing this, what the hell they are doing, and by the way, you can also help them along, both your police and these people installing it, by saying what you're engaging in is, number one, crimes against humanity, genocide, and treason, right? In the olden days, it used to be called high treason because you would be hanging from a very high tree if you were ever caught, right? And the laws for those have never changed. They're still there. And actually, they are an agreement, a societal agreement about whoever does something that egregious deserves to be dead, because unless they are dead, we will be, you know? So what I did recently is I gathered together all the people who were willing to testify about the directed energy weapon system that is hitting them, the targeted individuals. Now they are getting a weaponized 5G, and they get, you know, gunned with this 24/7 to see how long does it take them and me to die. So I took their affidavits and I, you know, put it together and I made some results. And now all I'm doing is I'm taking those results, which show a lifelong program, a terminal program that has your death as its goal, that is using hacking on you, stalking, bio warfare, directed energy weapons, chipping, non-consensual body implants, neurotechnology, everything, all at once on individuals. And I take the evidence, which is court, affidavits under oath, the highest quality of affidavits one can have, which is under oath, with a signed statement of truth, where the signature is witnessed by a person entitled to administer oaths, and these affidavits are sent to me with photo ID. So that's the highest level you can get. Now I gathered these together, and now that I have analyzed them and I can prove that the system exists, I am just sending it to all the press, all the police. I even want to send it to doctors and psychiatrists and lawyers with the attachment, by the way, guys, we're dealing with exactly this: genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, right, and treason. And all of those are punishable by death, right? And even in the countries where you wouldn't think so. So, you journalists, you start reporting. If you don't report, you will be held, in contempt of your duties of protecting the population. You've got a duty to report about crimes against humanity. The police has a statutory duty to investigate. And the other important thing that people need to know, those people who are installing the Radwin 5000 and all this other stuff, is that crimes against humanity do not have a limitation period, which means we have all the time in the world. The survivors have all the time in the world to get you in court and your assets. In other words, if you are partaking in this, you will be watching over your shoulder until the end of your life, because you might get away with it now, but people will come after you with court orders and will get all your money and your private, assets, because you have benefited from the proceeds of not just crime, but a genocide. So that's what I'm working on. I'm trying to ignore the AI, wake up the people who can be woken the quickest, and then say, yes, you do have legal means. And my final big clue, that is the missing piece for many, and I really want to say it, because it's something that utterly floored me. I also want to get across to judges and to police and many other people who are frontline that they are most likely implanted. And when you realize you have been implanted yourself, it means you have been hooked up to this 5G system that the 5G will be targeting. And when you realize you have already been sucked into it, and let's say you're a high court judge or something like that, the entire thing gets much more personal, okay? And that's the key, what most people need. They're very happy seeing somebody else die, but when it's about their own, chance of dying, that's when they get going. Now, there's a very simple test to see if you have an eye implant, and I will show you what type of eye implant you have if you have this. Get yourself an ultraviolet torch that is, I think this one is broadcasting around 400 nanometers. So it has a normal torch, a stroboscope, and then it has this purple light. And then I've seen it many times, I've shown it many times, and I fried my eyes. But when you hold it into your eyes, your pupils will light up green. I hope people can see this. So there's a reflective surface inside your pupil, inside where there should be a black hole, and it is fluorescent green. If you have a fluorescent green, it means you are implanted. And when you're doing this and you're kind of doing it in front of the mirror, you can see that it's a surface just a few millimeters behind your iris. Now, the technology that is, has been put into you is being manufactured, I think, among others, by this company here. This is an article from TechCrunch. And really, I want every single judge, when they are going into a court case about 5G, to have a look at this article. This is the eye implant we're talking about. This is your lens here. This is your iris, which is blue or brown or whatever. But below that, because your iris is like a muscle, below that, there's a cavity, and this container is in there. And the question is, how does it get there? Well, this company that manufactures these, it's called Omega Ophthalmics, has a little advert you can find online where they show you how they inject this into the eye. They inject it in there, and then it pops out of the syringe and pops into shape and lodges itself there, okay? And when you see this fluorescent green, what you're seeing is the bottom of this container, okay? And with your eye liquid, this container has a refractive index such that it's pretty well matched. So you don't see the container under visible light, but under ultraviolet light, it shows up as fluorescent green. Okay, now, if all these judges got themselves an ultraviolet torch, which you can get for 10 euros, just do the test and see if you've been implanted, because police officers and judges and journalists are frontline, and so are soldiers and pilots, of course, right, military pilots. The cartel would have implanted these people first, and bankers, I guess, because bankers also look at sensitive stuff. So the AI would want to see exactly what you're seeing, and it's mapping everything that you're seeing. It can generate control files really easily because it will see what you're doing in the bedroom with whom, right? But it will also see when you're looking at confidential documents. It is the ultimate thing, and it is so fast to implant. I think it's like Formula One. It takes seconds, okay? It's not very involved. And I was personally shocked to see how many people I found with this in, okay? When you don't have this fluorescent green, you might have a more advanced technology, but in my experience, these people also don't have the radio frequency emissions in their necks. So to me, as far as I can tell, they genuinely look like they don't have this technology in them, okay? But the people who have the eye implants, all of them, I found radio frequency emissions in their neck or the back of the head area. That's usually where the strongest emitter is. So, Alfred, this is what I uncovered the last couple of months, and it was one of these, holy cow moments. That's what we're staring at. So I want these judges to know that if they have a fluorescent green pupil, they are already hooked up to this 5G system, because it cannot just kill, it can read out these things, it can pulse them and charge them up so that they, continue functioning. But if you have fluorescent eyes, well, you should start caring about 5G, and you should start helping me shut down targeting, because you're target, That's what I think. And unless these judges are completely stupid, which they can't be, because, they had to work really hard to get there, I think that's the moment when they will, be woken up. Because the first time I saw that in my eyes, that was just like, oh, right. There's somebody did something to me that is pretty impossible to get back out again, which means that they can continue using me. But when a judge finds that in his eyes, his wife's eyes, and his children's eyes, I think that's the moment where, with or without neurotech, they're going to think, okay, we have to do something about it.
Now, what's the function of the implant? What does that implant do to the person or make them susceptible of being done,
They
controlled?
can be manipulated in the most insidious way because this implant, this holder is just a cavity holder, and then they can put whatever sensors they want to into that holder, and it holds it in place. So what they do to you depend on what technology they put into that thing. But the standard stuff that I hear all the time is, number one, victims keep saying, even if I try to trick them, they can see through my eyes. So it means that there are little sensors where, all the light, that everything you see goes through this pupil, this hole. So if you put a sensor on the other end, a transparent sensor, whoever is reading out that sensor can see what you're seeing. But then there's a second function, which is an LCD screen, whereby people are being shown high definition movies, and typically at night. And I think that's because when you have a dark screen, when you've got your eyes closed, your eyelids are like a dark screen, like a canvas, where you can project stuff on. And they did that to me. So they announced an attack on my father. I saw that my father is going to collapse, as he was doing sport, and he collapsed doing sport 3 days later. And it was a high definition movie. Okay. So when you have dreams that are very vivid, where you are in a dream and you feel like, oh, I can see everything and I can walk through these rooms or these scenes, that is a virtual reality simulation being shown to you. So the way to inoculate yourself against the mind control is to know, okay, it's my eye implant, okay, it's these jokers from the NSA or CIA doing it, and they want to manipulate me. Do never take messages through these. Don't think it's God talking to you. Don't think you have an esoteric experience. No, you're being messed with by extremely sadistic AI. That is the key, And for those people who have never experienced this, what it feels like and looks like, because they also kind of, you don't just have the eye implants. You've got chips on the back of your head. You've got the chip cluster on your skull, typically, and maybe even chips in your brain, right? And then they set you into this woo state where you're a bit like, woo, your head goes a bit like funny. And your ability to discern is reduced. And that's how they try to sneak in these messages. So the victims typically, would get some sort of messiah programming. They really think God is talking to them, or they get very scared because they are being shown horrific images, And what you need to know is, no, this is just jokers. It's a bunch of jokers somewhere in a room.
Right.
Sorry. And all this ties in with the 5G, of course. Sorry, because you were wondering, how does this connect to 5G?
Yeah.
5G enables the communication, the fast transfer of all this data from you and all the people and animals around you, basically. That's also what the 5G does.
Well, I can recall in 2015, at the beginning of 2015, having a guest on, and the guest came on with a device that he claimed was channeling an AI, an artificial intelligence from the year 2026, who had come back. It was a benevolent AI who was trying to warn against Donald Trump becoming president of the United States, because he would, quote, go on to being reelected, and then in 2025, after the second term, with the help of China and Russia, would become the first president of the world. And he would, quote, bring the entire world under global mind control, end of quote. It seems to me that this 5G and 6G, there are now, and I've read them over the last couple of weeks, online descriptions of what 6G is, and it's a further elaboration of 5G. There's some technical things there. that the 5G system is kind of the infrastructure to line up global mind control of every person on the planet, and that's why you have the entity called Donald Trump, whether he's a clone or not. I've seen very serious articles that state, based on the earlobe of the current Donald Trump versus the old Donald Trump and other arguments, that the current Donald Trump may be a clone. And I've seen photographs of clone centers that were cloning a Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. I don't know whether that's, you know, authentic or not, but I'm just saying that it raises reasonable doubts, prima facie, that the 5G technology that you've described, aside from being a killing weapon, is on the flip side creating a race of humans, those who aren't killed off. On the flip side, they will be a race of AI entrained humanoids. I won't call them human, I'll call them AI entrained humanoids who are globally mind controlled, and such that what we normally used to describe as divine inspiration, it's the AI that is acting as God. And in the panels that we examined in the AI research, this AI primarily is in competition with what is normally considered to be, quote, the deity or God. You know, that is, it wants those godlike powers. That's what it wants. So this seems to be putting a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together. And I wondered if you could comment on all of this that we've just talked about.
Absolutely. I think you are absolutely right. Now, I come from a different angle, which is studying systems and how systems evolve. Now, I can back up, and actually this little thing that I showed can back up what you say down to a T, because at minute 216, this clip showed how the Radwin 5000 is already deployed globally. Okay. Now, just as much as you and I can have this call, and I'm in Europe and you're in North America, right? So there's a link, you know, as good as speed of light going from here, Switzerland, all the way across to North America, right? The same system can happen with our brain waves as well. If my chips, which I can tell are on right now because I'm being set under current, you know, non-stop. So I've got dozens and dozens of tiny, tiny chips that have been injected under my scalp, as I found. Now, if they are communicating, and you know, they communicate from here to the big emitter at the back of my head or my neck, and that goes to the Wi-Fi, it is like having a mental Skype call. So there's already victims saying that they can read their thoughts and they don't even have to speak. The AI can, you know, from the way the brain works and the vibrations in the throat, work out what the person is, you know, saying to themselves, if you like. And that system is already not just sci-fi, it's already deployed in targeted individuals. So they want to have the super race whereby you and I, we don't just have to take our mouse and, you know, click on something to connect the Skype call. In my head, I should be able to say, well, I would like to connect to the brain of Alfred Weber and ask him a question. And the system they want is that I can query your brain with your permission or without. I can ask for the knowledge you have, even if you're just focusing on something else and reading a paper, you know? And that is also something they're working on. So I completely agree with that. This 5G system is exactly that. So their cartel signaling, their advertising material puts that out. And also what I hear from other victims and what I experienced myself, that is exactly already deployed now in 2019. And now they just want to use a better system, you know, to move forward. But people have to be aware that this is the ultimate thought police. if the 5G system detects, the AI, monitoring the 5G system, detect that you have bad thoughts, that you suddenly start doubting Donald Trump, it will just zap you in the head. And you will either forget what you were thinking about, or that area of the brain will get damaged, right? Or you will be just taken out and you will have a heart attack and collapse in the middle of the street. Some journalists, did. So that is the system, and we're not talking 2050 or 2090. We are talking about 2020, next year. And with 5G, it will be next year for all of our listeners, and already today it is for every single one of the victim cases that I support, and for myself already, So that is what we're facing up to. And I can tell you, if the AI wants to cripple you, it can. Okay, and that's basically why I look so disheveled, and because I'm glad to be alive after a day of torture. I spend most of my time away from my desk and my home, because they have all the directed energy weapons pointed at my study and at my bedroom, and when I'm in those areas, they will gun me to absolute bits. So that is the reality. Oh, your mic is muted, I think.
Yeah, sorry about that. And in fact, we will include the link to your study in the article that accompanies this panel, and also in the description, and as well in the comments that and the article that we published, the review of your study, in which we observed, and I'd like to get your comments on our observation, because our observation was that your study seemed to affirm that the purpose of the TI program, from the point of view of the controllers, was to serve almost as a test group, so that they could test out and see the parameters for the design of the 5G larger killer system.
Exactly.
Could you comment
Yes,
further on that?
absolutely. I can. And in fact, I would like to, if I may, show people so that they know what we are both talking about. So I just go back to my website. If people go, so to Stop 007, I show you how to find this. The very top link under is the link to the original affidavit that every victim filled out. But the second link is the returned affidavits. And it seems at first that there are only very few. So I've got only 8 from the US and only 2 from Canada and so on. But overall, I now have 18. And the study was published on 15. And most people think, oh, this is low statistics, but this is not low statistics, because every affidavit is testifying. I'll just flash up, one. It is testifying in great detail. So first of all, this is the summary of all the big topics that affect them: intrusive surveillance, neighborhood terror, stalking, street theater, crimes traveling abroad, hacking. But every section stands for lists and lists of offenses where many might apply, and this last X in the last column indicates evidence. So people might have evidence for some things, but not evidence for others. And this testimony combines affidavits so that also the stuff like neurotechnology that is hard to prove can be pulled out, and we can combine our observations. Now, these red PDF buttons are the actual returned affidavits. And down here are the tip of the iceberg analysis results. And what they show, so this is the summary. So every row stands for a victim whose life is being destroyed. Okay, so these are the serial numbers that they themselves picked to anonymize it. So this is, I want to stress, this is not the Nazi serial number tattooed in your arm, because that was given to you by somebody else. This is an anonymizing number that the victim, him or herself, picked, and only the victim and I know who it is. Okay, and I will never say who it is. So this is just, the victim can recognize their own affidavit and check that I've represented it correctly, that's all this number is for. It is not, it does not stand for the victim, it stands for the affidavit. Very important, especially here in Europe, where people are sensitive about serial numbers. But what it shows, and let me just blow it up a bit, is that first of all, we see that men and women are targeted equally, and there's a slight asymmetry, but with the 18 affidavits, it's exactly 50-50. We can also see that this targeting program goes back to 1960s, at least. I actually think it's the Vatican targeting program. It also shows what this country is, what country did it start in? Okay, we can see that a lot of countries are involved. So USA, UK, Belgium, Russia, even Japan. So it's on 3 continents already. But then this column asks, has your targeting stopped since it started? And what's so shocking is that regardless of when this targeting started, even if it goes back to the 1960s, the answer is most of the time no. In over 90% of the cases, out of all these 15 people, only one person said targeting stopped. And actually with the 18, still out of 18, only one person said that. So in other words, this program is for life. Once they start attacking you, you either die in the program, right? Or you're still alive, but you're still in the program. They will not stop until they've killed you. And then this big box shows all the different offenses. And what you can see is if you look horizontally, you can see a shocking number of horrific crimes being done to one single victim. So the typical victim would first of all know about other victims, so it's just the tip of the iceberg, but would be under 24-hour surveillance, would experience frequent housebreaking, non-stop stalking, computer hacking, their income would be sabotaged, their partnership would be sabotaged, they would be shot at with directed energy weapons, they would be attacked with bio-warfare, so bioweapons, they would find implants, they would have voice to skull, so non-stop blithering from computer programs and real people. The image to skull is the eye implant. They would be shown movies, and they would be neurotech, and many of them, exactly half, would have evidence that it's generational. So either their parents were already in this program, or now their children are. Okay? So if you look horizontally, it's already the most horrific crimes we have seen since the Nazis. But if you now look vertically, you can see that almost every single person says exactly the same. There's small variations because some people are not in the full Monty program, but everybody has the surveillance. Almost everybody has the stalking, and almost everybody has the hacking. But also, almost everybody, 73%, has the directed energy weapons. So down here, these are the percentages, and I turned everything that's above 60% red. So you can see 100% get stalking, over 70% housebreaking, but also, you know, over 70% are being shot at with directed energy weapons. And the last column shows that they get all the help denied. So 60% report that the police doesn't help them, another 60% that lawyers don't help them, and 20% that doctors don't help them. Before you think that doctors are particularly benign, be reminded that only those people who get shot at with directed energy weapons or have implants would ever go and see a doctor. You would never go and see a doctor about stalking or hacking, okay? But what this shows, the 60%, so the remaining 40 might have never contacted a lawyer or might have never bothered going to the police. So it's the tip of the iceberg. But what it shows, it's a government program. These people have been told to stay the hell away. That's what it means. And these results, there's a tag on here, the second page. It shows that even though it might have started in these countries, victims testify about how the targeting was continued when they tried to flee abroad. And when you look at these countries, you truly see, when you look at all these countries together, you see that it's a global program. Okay, it's literally everywhere. And we can also show that there's an increase in the last 20 years or 10 to 20 years. But what I did when I got these results, they were so shocking, I sent a press release. So if you follow the link to the press release, you can see what I sent in the press release. It's fairly neutral. But here, down here, is the list the press contact list, and you can see how I have contacted now. This is the dateline. I have contacted the mainstream press in all these countries. I have contacted the entire mainstream press of the US, and if you scroll down, you can see which exact emails. This is, for example, the email all the members of the British Parliament, all the emails, everywhere where there's a tick, an X on the right, I've contacted them. So if I scroll down to the press of the US, you can, oh God, this is all members of Parliament. Here, these are the countries. This is the members of the European Parliament, and I've contacted the entire European Commission, but I made press lists that depending on the country, hang on, where are the countries? Here. I've also contacted the military so that they don't have plausible deniability anymore. They have been told there's a crime against humanity happening, so all of them have been told, okay? The US Space Command, FBI, CIA, NSA, Air Force, no more, you know, here, up here, British intelligence. I sent it to them. That's it. No more plausible deniability. The police services in Germany and UK have been contacted, all the shires in the US, and these are the US press contacts. Now, for the US, I only have the big ones, but for the other countries, I have sometimes also the regional ones. Okay, so Canada is very sparse, but for example, in the UK, I've got a long list of regional newspapers that all have been contacted. And for example, in cases like Germany, the list goes on and on and on and on. Okay, so these email lists were given to me by helpful people. And if you go back, the overview of everybody who's now in the know now and cannot ever deny it ever again is the entire mainstream US press, the mainstream UK press, German press, French press, Belgium, only 3 outlets, sadly, but the Dutch press, Swiss, Canadian, Danish, Norwegian, Polish, and Finnish press cannot claim that they don't know any longer. Neither can the police in Germany and the UK, none of the intel agencies here, right? And none of the members of the European Parliament, or the European Commission rather. And for the parliamentarians, I only have 3 countries, okay? But this is what I'm doing now. I have now, my thinking is, Alfred, I have produced the best evidence, the best in-class evidence I can possibly produce. I can't produce better evidence because, number one, these people are not just highly traumatized, they keep being tortured and shot at while they have to testify. This is unprecedented. It's like trying to get people to testify in Nuremberg trial while they are still at Auschwitz, right? On a gas chamber.
Hello?
Yes? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Somehow my my volume just went down by itself. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Can you describe what the feedback or what the so far the effect, either privately to you or publicly, of this outreach to the press by region has been?
The outcome was pretty much what I expected, with one pleasant surprise. So I sent you can see the dates, it was sent throughout June. I got an awful lot of automatic replies for confirmation that they received them, so I know that they have them, okay? But the actual response was exactly 0. There's deafening silence. With one very pleasant exception, which was a British police force where one police officer replied to me personally by name with a very nice email thanking me for having and confirming that they received the information at 3 a.m. in the morning, because he was on shift. And he read the email, he read through it, and he, I think, recognized the importance of it, because he didn't just press delete, he actually took the bother to reply to me personally. So what I did is I sent him an email and I said, please, you have to find your eye implants, because being British police, you are hooked up to Tetra. And Tetra is like 5G with the mind control just in small. So I used the fact that he was hopefully effectively off duty in the police station, but not much to do, to really do an information dump on him. And I said, if you get your head around this, you'll be ahead of the curve. But he was the only person. And I've contacted, half of Europe.
Right, because from our analysis of the AI, these categories would fit within what we had categorized as AI sponsors and hosts, i.e., these are the categories of humans that the AI initially targeted in its terraforming of the planet when it's now approaching the planet to terraform Earth, because it's terraformed other inhabited planets in our galaxy as an exopolitician. I can say that from research. We know that. So they are that's outreach to profits to the sponsors and hosts. There are AI profits and AI sponsors and hosts. The head of AI research at Google, for example, is an AI profit, and then Google itself, and they're different categories. So now our job shifts. Once we've served them with notice, fine. But now we have to go. We're kind of doing what we call triage in the public health field, and so now we have to find the living. Separate the living from the dead.
Yeah.
And the triage that we're doing now is the AI profit sponsors and hosts versus the living humans.
Yeah.
And to get this understanding and message to them, to the living humans, so that action can be taken by the living human community to protect ourselves against the deployment of this planetary holocaust, if you want to call
it. It is a planetary holocaust. That's what people announced.
Yeah.
You know what? It's such a wonderful, I mean, it's not wonderful, but it's so wonderfully fitting, calling it a triage. And I'm thinking my next step, because I was aware, I've done these email campaigns before. There was the tsunami campaign in 2017. I know they don't reply, but already the tsunami campaign created so many waves, they shot me to bits. So I had to abort halfway after informing half the world with all the embassies. But what I know, it creates waves because there are a lot of living, but not my next step is to use the serving of notice and the failure of taking action to remove the dead wood so that the living can take over the steering. Because at the moment, it's like having a pilot who's unconscious. He's still in the seat. You can't get at his controls. You need to get him the hell out of the seat first, right? And then you can check, is he dead or is he just, passed out? And that's what we need to do, right? And your analogy fits perfectly.
Right. So what strategies then do you suggest? I mean, we are doing our best here by creating information programs like this, and we're doing our best to send these out to our different channels. What information strategies, or how can we begin to shift strategies more creatively to begin to awaken and to accelerate and quicken the awakening amongst the living human community as to what's really going on with 5G rollout, do you think?
I actually had a big success. So I can now tell you, based on a recent success in Switzerland, where we managed to put so much psychological pressure on a Swiss court that they rolled over, right, like a little puppy, and suddenly started playing ball in a way I would have never thought, okay? And it's surprisingly simple what you have to do. Number one is you have to realize that there are a lot of living people there, but they are scared. They will activate as soon as they can see that there's a crowd baying outside, because they will know, oh, I do have support. There's something to fall back on. They realize they are not single fighters anymore. They are joining a team. They're joining a takeover, a good takeover, a good, recapture. Then they activate. So number one, keep just shouting from the top of your lungs, but concretely, it splits into, are you a victim, or are you just concerned and, you might be a victim. So number one is everybody, and I'm not saying it because I've got, some sort of trade deal with these UV torch people. It's the quickest way to find out if you're implanted or not. It's much easier than finding your radio frequency chips to just check your eyes. Okay, that's what everybody should do. Because when you're the big black hole, not the iris, that can also glow purple, but when the big hole suddenly is fluorescent green and you look like, one of the X-Men in front of your bathroom mirror, that's when you get it. It's like, oh my God, they did something to me already. That's not natural. And that's step number one. Everybody, please do that. We need to find out who has been implanted like that. We need to find out, which of the children have been implanted. That is the highest priority, okay? So everybody get the UV torch, $10 or something. You can recycle this. You can use it on your entire family and your neighborhood. Now, when your pupils are fluorescent green, that's a kind of good, fire under your backside, because it means you understand that you're in it. You're in this genocide program, okay? If you don't have these fluorescent pupils, be aware that the intelligence agencies have implanting teams out in the neighborhood, and there's no way to lock your door unless it's literally a physical deadlock of all your windows and doors. There's no way to keep them out, because they will open any lock, okay? So it means that you're one of the few without these implants. They will be out after you. So if you're staying at a hotel, if you literally in a hotel, what you have to do is you have to move the furniture so that the door cannot physically be opened while you're sleeping. And then you have to worry about the window, because they can also come in, right? Implanting, you take seconds. And unfortunately, this is not a joke. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this until the end of your life, but until the court cases get going and we start getting injunctions against these people, because we know who they are. So this is the first step for everybody. Get the UV torch. The second step is, when you have understood that I'm not just bullshitting you, right? Then what you do is you inform your entire family, and you start systematically scanning everybody. Even if they think you're barking mad, it doesn't matter, because this is about survival, okay? With children, be super careful. Do not hold them as close as I did, because I'm foolish. I don't have long to live with the, attacks. I do this. Don't hold it this close. Hold it at a distance, and then you can already see. And with children, be super careful with the eyes, but check them, okay? And don't keep the light too long. Also, record evidence. So photograph your evidence, because that is your entry ticket to a multi-million damages, in court. And it is your damages that will help us asset strip this crime cartel. They have to pay damages. We need to cut them down, and that's a very civilized way. The next step is, so number one, find out, the evidence for yourself. Inform your family. That's activating your networks. Inform your colleagues. This is not a joke, and as they say, this is not a drill. Inform them about the genocide plans. Make up your own mind that this is not a hoax. This is a very serious private intelligence agency. They've got all the goods on all the countries around the world, which means they are very high up in the cartel. And I think in the About section, Ryan Zimmerman found out that they're saying things like, oh, some people have accused us of being a satanic ring. We're no such thing. Yeah, right. It's the Illuminati saying the opposite. They are a satanic ring. They know full well that this is happening. Inform yourself that Dr. Rima Leibov had a patient who was a head of state who talked to her about the great culling. Okay, this is not a joke. So then the next step for you to do after you have found your evidence, you have informed all your neighbors and really activated your social network, and keep repeating it like a broken record until every last of your aunties gets it. Then the next thing is, the most civilized thing is court cases. So you stop looking at targeted individuals as if they're just talking about sci-fi. You realize, oh my God, that is where I will be in 2020 or 2021 unless we make these court cases succeed. And Alfred, I found the most successful thing to date is literally turning up in court. Please, you don't even have to bring placards or scare these judges. Just fill the room to the brim with court observers, because it is for the benefit of the judges. I never ever want to harm a judge. I don't even want to harm the judge who stalked me, okay? So what this is about, it's about balancing the pressure a judge receives from the mafia, from this global crime cartel. They're under a lot of pressure. Maybe they've got control files. But if this control file judge is pushed into a court and sees that you've got, you know, the litigants, and then behind it, there are so many people that some of them are standing up, and there's a queue, and there's a big crowd on the steps outside, he understands, shit, this is important. All these people have Facebook profiles. We're talking about millions of people behind this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. That's the moment when a judge can go back to his handlers or her handlers and say, look, I mean, what are we going to do, right? We have to make some allowances here. And that's when they start negotiating. And we had a super successful experience with the Swiss court here, where they acquitted an inventor who they wanted, I think, to just kill in prison. And all it took was for 20 people to turn up, one camera team from Germany. I turned up, and I think by now I've got the reputation in Switzerland of being a bit of a mad cow. And suddenly, what they did is they didn't get out their old grumpy judges who really need a license to kill for their face alone. They got a young judge with a clean slate, no history, no tentacles, and he was super nice. And then he was super accommodating. Now, of course, that was a stage show, but the fact that they put on the stage show for our benefit shows us that they have registered our complaint. So what we need, I'm trying to push all the victims to get their court cases ready. I'm trying to build trust with them. I'm trying to prove to them, look, I'm not going to reveal your identity. I'm not going to harm you, but I need you to speak up anonymously, albeit under oath, so that I can show, I mean, look, I only have 2 from Canada. If I had 50, we're talking a different, ball game here. So I need the victims to testify. I need them to fill out the affidavit. And I need everybody else to start pointing to the anonymous affidavit and say, look, what's that? It's a genocide. It's crimes against humanity. Okay? And that's what you have to do. So in this sequence, find the evidence, get your UV torch, scan yourself and your family, inform everybody over social networks, and then keep an eye on the court cases and take your day off. I'm sorry you can't use it as a holiday, but you're trying to save your life and your family's life, because these court cases are during working hours, right? So turn up to these court cases. You don't have to say anything, do anything. You don't have to wear a t-shirt. You just have to put yourself into the room, because the AI also maps all our identities. And when they know that the judge is faced by a large group of people they didn't expect to be there, they can't control. They might try to fill the room with CIA, cutouts and so on. But even then, if you stay around on the steps just to, register the crowd, they will realize, oh my God, there's all these people. We never had them in the computer simulation. We didn't know that they are literally going to turn up. That's what we need. Yeah. And that's when the AI starts calculating and saying, we need concessions.
So what would a typical, you mentioned that case in Switzerland. What would a typical court case be? I mean, say people say, okay, well, I'm excited. I'm going to do mine. I'm going to get the affidavit. What are we seeking in these court cases?
I would say the following. The entire judiciary can railroad you with drawing out these court processes. So they get you into a literally deep mire, and they try to suck you down and wear you out. They are forced to do this by the crime cartel. That's what they're set up to do. But you can basically do a quick, kind of a hit and run on them if you just go into court for an injunction. And with all this, we are, first of all, we're saying injunction, 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 injunction. As much as an injunction is, the typical two cases are, number one, somebody builds on your land and you're saying you don't have building permission. It could be a big corporation, multi-million, investment and high-powered lawyers. But if you're a little person, you go for the injunction and you interpose the court as the big mean beast between you and the other party. And the court says, hang on, you're not allowed to do this and that until we have the situation sorted. Now, that's what I would go for with everything, okay? Everything. First of all, an injunction, because then you can go into a court, certainly in the UK, that's what I did, and you stand before a judge within half an hour, typically, and that's what it's designed to do. Now, in the case of the victims, you have an extra incentive because you're not just talking about abstract mobile phone antennas. That's why I'm trying to push the targeting victims front, because they will have burn injuries, they would have scars, tons of evidence. And then you're going in, for example, if you're a woman, this injunction system is also set up that the court protects you if you had, for example, a violent husband. If you have an argument, he says, I'm going to kill you, and then goes off to work, you can run to the court, get an injunction against him. So the court is on notice, and the court says, well, you keep off, right? To protect you. So it's always getting the big dog, to bark for you. And I think, for not just for female targets, but for all these targets, that is the best. That is actually what the legislation is designed to do, right? It is to protect your life in a situation where you can't fight for your life yourself and protect yourself,
Right. So if we take these kind of principles that we're talking about and we put it down to the rollout of 5G, which is a physical rollout, and because of the technology, these towers have to be located very close to each other. So what we're talking about is people going down and to courts and getting injunctions against the placement of towers next to them on health grounds.
Yeah.
And so they would get certificates from their doctors. They would bring in the affidavits that you've done. What kind of evidence would they bring to support the injunctions, do you think?
So what I have, I'm building, and I kind of have built, is I'm trying to prove the targeting thing. And if you are not being targeted, you're not a victim. Let's say you don't have the eye implants and all that jazz. You're just a person who just is really worried about 5G. You can benefit from the fact that 5G is a directed energy weapon. And then what you do is you download all the affidavits that I have on my website. You download the analysis and you put it before the judge and you say, look, there's big genocide plans. Here are the victims, but here's the big genocide plan. They want to kill 227 million Americans. I'm not a targeted individual, but this means if I'm not in that pool today, that's where I will be tomorrow. So today I want an injunction because I believe that these 5G antennas are directed energy weapons, and thankfully they're already experts saying, so experts specifically in telecommunication, saying this is a directed energy weapon. 5G is a directed energy weapon. So I'm trying to get in touch with those people. There's one German professor who said that he needs to put it in an affidavit, a generic public affidavit. This is what he believes to be true, right? He doesn't have to incur any financial liability because he just states what he believes to be true. And then we need to put pressure on the judges because the judges have the telecommunication industry behind them, which is, I think, the most profitable industry. It's actually a weapons industry, okay? And we need to scare the judges. And the key is to say to the judges, hey, here's a UV torch. I'm including it in my bundle. Why don't you pop to the next mirror and see if you're in this program? Because my gut feeling and what systems analysis tells me is that their irises, or their pupils rather, will be fluorescent green. So what I did is I checked quite a lot of journalists, and I was shocked. I was shocked. And I also checked normal people, housewives and campaigners, and they all had these eye implants. you know. So with the judges, heck, knowing how the cartel works, I'm pretty sure they will find them, right? And then typically it takes 48 hours for a person to digest this, to accept it, if they are very clued in. So ideally, you file the UV torch with your court bundle, you leave enough time for the judge to emotionally handle this, and then, unless he's completely messed in the head by AI, he should come into court, and if you've got the baying crowd outside, he can say, okay, that's it, guys, we need to pull. And they pulled it in Brussels, and I think that's important because it's NATO. These generals, of course, know what this is, and they don't want their own, you know, families and their own, you know, soft parts fried by the 5G system. So look, it was Brussels and Geneva. And what's in Geneva? The UN. You know, they know what's coming.
So this is really the implementation of what they call Agenda 21 or Agenda 35 or whatever.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So we've now hit the 2-hour mark, and I'm thinking I'm thinking from the point of view of our audience, that's
enough to digest,
which is about as much as people can. So if we really want to sum up a thought now and maybe leave people with where they can get in contact with you, and then yeah, so over to you.
So I can be reached. So if people want more information, they can go to my website. Let me just share my screen. I will be very quick. I won't be laboring this very long. So very simple. You just say stop007.org, because, you know, it's James Bond that's doing this. Stop007.org. If you want to find out what it looks like to scan how to scan yourself, there's equipment and detection down here. And the UV torch that I talked about is in this long list of gadgets. It is down here, the UV torch, and you will see what it looks like, how to get it, and you will see a sample eye under normal light and the fluorescent green here. So unfortunately, there's a glare over that, but you can see it, the turquoise, quite clearly. To contact me personally, it is contact at, and then as the title says here at the very, very top, at stop007.org, all one word. And if people want, oh, by the way, am I sharing my screen even?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry, let me do this again. This thing was hacked on me. So what I said is, if you go to stop007.org and then you scroll down to equipment and detection, you can see in writing everything I said. So click on this pencil, and the UV torch is down here in the list, okay, under measurement, and you can see what an eye looks like under normal light and what you should look for if it's, you know, there's a glare patch here, but you can see the turquoise. To contact me personally, very simple. You just email me at contact and then at stop007.org, all one word, okay, and that's it. And you can also binge watch my videos on YouTube if you want to know more about this.
And where's your YouTube channel? What is that?
So if people just type in my name, Katherine Horton, and then stop007, they'll immediately get my channel. There's now over 450 videos out there. So just if you keep watching the recent ones, if you subscribe and click the little bell, then you will be notified when a new video comes along, and I'll try to keep people updated as we are moving through the court process. So you will hear about court cases and what to do, how to protect yourself and your family, and, you know, what to do if your relatives freak out and that sort of stuff.
Well, I really want to thank you, Katherine, Dr. Katherine Horton, for your work and for all of the efforts that you're doing, and for teaching us how to move through this moment, and for coming here today to share this important information, life-saving information with us. And I hope that in the future, because we're here in 2019, and it's like there's this time that you'll be able to join us again in the future, so we can monitor all of this and see see how we're doing. So thank you very much.
I thank your viewers for their patience, and I hope I can help.
Great, thank you.